Emanne Beasha's voice was the kind you hear once in a lifetime. An angelic, impossible sound coming from a girl who looked far too small to carry such power. When she stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage in 2019, even the judges didn't know what they were about to witness. But the moment she opened her mouth, everything stopped. Conversations froze. The audience leaned forward. And for a few seconds, it felt like the entire world held its breath. But what no one knew back then, what no one could have imagined, is that behind that miraculous voice was a story far more complicated than anyone realized. Because while millions were mesmerized by her gift, a different battle was quietly unfolding away from the cameras. A battle involving pressure, cultural expectations, career decisions, and the one thing every child star eventually faces, time. And now, years after her breathtaking performances of Nessun Dorma, La Mamma Morta, and Caruso, new details have started to surface. Details that explain why one of the most extraordinary young talents on AGT didn't follow the path the world expected. Why her career seemed to shift direction. Why the spotlight suddenly dimmed. And why those closest to her say this next chapter may be the most important of her life. If you think you know what happened to Emanne Beasha, you don't. Because the truth behind her rise, her struggles, her silence, and her surprising future is finally coming to light. And once you hear it, you'll never look at her story the same way again. When Emanne Beasha first appeared on America's Got Talent, the world thought it was witnessing the beginning of a career that would follow the classic prodigy trajectory. Opera houses, world tours, platinum albums, and a meteoric rise that would place her among the greatest young vocalists of her generation. But what most people forget is this. Emanne was only 10 years old when she took that stage. 10. An age when most kids are still trying to memorize multiplication tables, not Puccini. From the outside, everything looked perfect. She had supportive parents, a loving family, and a talent that seemed almost supernatural. Judges praised her as otherworldly. Audiences rose to their feet every time she performed, and viral clips of her voice spiraled across social media like wildfire. Yet behind that breathtaking voice was a child navigating a world built for adults. A world she was suddenly thrust into with no guidebook and no time to catch her breath. According to people close to the family, the pressure began almost immediately after her first audition aired. Phone calls, record label inquiries, interview requests, international invitations. All directed at a girl who still played with toys between rehearsals. Offers were tempting, glamorous, and often overwhelming. Everyone wanted a piece of her. Everyone wanted a commitment. Everyone wanted to shape her future. But there was something viewers didn't see. The Beasha family made a decision early on. Emanne's childhood would come first. And that choice, while admirable, came with enormous challenges. Producers reportedly urged her team to capitalize on her momentum as quickly as possible. They knew the entertainment world moves fast, and child stars burn out even faster. But her parents resisted the pressure. They wanted her to grow at a natural pace, not be pushed into a schedule that would drain her emotionally, physically, and academically. And that protective mindset created friction between what the industry wanted and what the family believed was right. As AGT progressed, the demands only increased. Rehearsals grew longer. Media attention intensified. And though Emanne handled it with grace, insiders say she was still just a little girl trying to make sense of a suddenly enormous world. She loved performing. That part was effortless. But navigating contracts, long-term commitments, travel, and expectations? No child is prepared for that. And then came the turning point. After the show ended, many fans assumed Emanne would immediately sign a major record deal. But the truth was more complicated. Several labels approached her with offers that, according to those familiar with the negotiations, would have required heavy touring, accelerated training, and a level of exposure the family felt wasn't healthy for someone her age. The entertainment industry often views prodigies as opportunities, lightning in a bottle that must be used before it fades. But her parents refused to treat her that way. So instead of skyrocketing into non-stop professional work, the family chose a quieter path, one that allowed Emanne to grow, explore, and live without the crushing demands of fame. That single decision confused fans, frustrated industry executives, and left the public wondering what had happened to the little girl with the voice of an angel. But in reality, something far more important was happening behind the scenes. Emanne was learning who she wanted to be outside of a spotlight. Her voice remained extraordinary, but now the focus shifted toward balance, education, personal growth, and giving her the freedom to mature without spectacle. What the world interpreted as disappearance was, in truth, a strategic retreat to protect a young talent from the same pitfalls that had destroyed so many child stars before her. But this wasn't the only reason her career path changed. Something else happened. Something that tested her passion, reshaped her goals, and altered her future forever. In the months after America's Got Talent, Emanne Beasha's life shifted in ways that even her most devoted fans didn't fully understand. While the public assumed she was stepping away simply to enjoy a normal childhood, those close to her say the truth was far more layered, and at times, emotionally complicated. Because as the world celebrated her as the little opera miracle, Emanne was beginning to grapple with a reality that almost every child star faces: the cost of a gift that feels bigger than you. For a young performer, especially an operatic soprano, the natural development of the voice is everything. It's fragile, it's unpredictable, and most importantly, it changes dramatically during adolescence. And that's exactly what began happening to Emanne. Around the age of 12, insiders say her voice began transitioning, not in a damaging way, but in a way that required patience, retraining, and a gentleness that the entertainment industry rarely allows. Opera is not pop. It is not forgiving. It demands precision, physical maturity, and years of disciplined guidance. Emanne had the raw talent, the emotional intelligence, and the gift. But no prodigy can bypass the biology of growing up. Her coaches reportedly explained that pushing her too hard during this delicate stage could permanently damage her voice. And for a child who had already skyrocketed to fame, that news was terrifying. One wrong technique, one intense rehearsal schedule, one push from an impatient record label, and the voice that stunned the world could be injured forever. So the family made an even more protective move. Emanne pulled back from public performances almost entirely. During this time, she focused on vocal health, gentle training, school, and simply being a kid. Fans were confused. Some wondered if she was struggling. Others speculated about industry conflicts. But the truth is far more human. She was protecting the one thing that defined her career, even if that meant stepping out of the spotlight. But there was another twist to her story. Something far more emotionally challenging than vocal. Changes. People close to the Beasha family say Emanne struggled deeply with the pressure of perfection. The world saw her as flawless, as the girl who couldn't produce a single wrong note. But privately, she began questioning her identity. Was she supposed to be an opera singer for life? Did she want to spend her teenage years rehearsing instead of living? Was this dream truly hers, or something the world wanted for her? These are impossible questions for an adult, let alone a girl who hadn't yet reached her teenage years. There were days when she loved the stage more than anything. And there were days, according to those around her, when she felt anxious, overwhelmed, and unsure whether she could meet the expectations placed on her shoulders. After all, when millions call you a once-in-a-generation talent, the fear of failing them can become suffocating. To protect her mental health and emotional well-being, her parents took another step. They began turning down more offers. Big ones, international tours, album deals, television appearances, things that could have made her a household name. They were determined to shield her from burnout, exploitation, and the brutal pressures that had destroyed countless young stars before her. But then something unexpected happened. Something that shifted her journey in an entirely different direction. During this quiet period, Emanne discovered something she loved just as much as opera: music outside of classical training. Pop, Middle Eastern styles, modern ballads, genres she had never fully explored before AGT. And for the first time, she began experimenting creatively, without an audience watching, without judges, without expectations. This exploration wasn't just a hobby. It would become the foundation for a future nobody saw coming. A future very different from what AGT fans expected. But that wasn't the only revelation waiting for her. Because soon, an entirely new challenge would hit her life. One that tested her confidence, her identity, and her relationship with fame itself. As Emanne Beasha entered her early teens, the path forward became clearer, but also far more complicated. While many fans assumed her time away from the spotlight was simply a hiatus, those close to her knew it was a critical period of personal and artistic growth. Emanne wasn't just protecting her voice. She was learning to define herself beyond the stage, beyond viral videos, beyond being labeled the little opera prodigy. During this period, Emanne explored not only different musical genres but also cultural and personal identity. Being Jordanian-American, she had grown up navigating two worlds. Classical opera had introduced her to a global audience, but she also wanted to explore music that connected to her roots and her own experiences as a teenager. Private performances for family and close friends became laboratories for creativity, experimentation, and self-discovery. According to her family, she loved trying new arrangements, fusing classical techniques with modern melodies, and even experimenting with English, Arabic, and Italian songs. Mentally and emotionally, she was learning resilience. The reality of child stardom, as anyone who has been in the public eye at a young age knows, is that it can leave deep marks on confidence and emotional well-being. Friends and coaches report that Emanne faced moments of doubt, anxiety, and intense self-critique. She was acutely aware of the expectations of millions. Yet she had to remind herself that she was still a child, a human being, not just a talent to be consumed by the world. Interestingly, this period of introspection didn't slow her growth. It strengthened her. By performing in smaller, controlled settings and taking time to train carefully, she built technical precision while also cultivating her emotional expressiveness. She was learning the subtle artistry that many professional singers spend years trying to achieve. Those who heard her during this period remarked that her voice had grown richer, more controlled, and deeply expressive, proof that stepping away from constant public scrutiny was the right choice. By 2023-2024, Emanne began to emerge in new ways. She performed select recitals, participated in collaborations with international musicians, and started to appear in online showcases. These were low profile compared to her AGT fame, but they allowed her to grow on her own terms, experimenting with cross-genre performances and exploring creative direction she controlled. It was during this time that she also began building a social media presence aimed at connecting with fans while protecting her privacy. Another significant development during this period was her expanding musical versatility. Emanne began blending opera with contemporary pop ballads, adding emotional nuance that transcended age and experience. Sources close to her say that this experimentation opened doors to potential album projects and collaborations with established artists, projects that were deliberately paced to avoid the intense pressure of mainstream stardom. Importantly, Emanne's story is not one of lost potential. On the contrary, her deliberate pacing, protective environment, and artistic exploration have set the stage for a sustainable, long-term career. While some may have expected an immediate post-AGT celebrity explosion, the truth is that this approach allowed her to preserve her health, her voice, and her passion, the very things that made her extraordinary in the first place. Fans now realize that the silence wasn't a disappearance. It was a strategic, thoughtful evolution. Emanne Beasha, the girl who stunned the world at 10, was quietly preparing to become Emanne Beasha, the artist who could inspire not just awe but respect, longevity, and authenticity. By the time Emanne Beasha reached her mid-teens, the foundation for her next chapter was firmly in place. The young opera prodigy, who once captivated millions on America's Got Talent, had transitioned from a viral sensation into a thoughtful, intentional artist. Her voice, once noted for its raw power, had matured into something more refined, nuanced, and emotionally resonant. Behind the scenes, she was shaping her career with careful attention to both artistry and personal well-being, a balance that eluded many child stars before her. Emanne's family remained deeply involved, not to control her, but to guide her through the complex music industry. She had learned from the early whirlwind of fame that the world could be relentless, especially when you are exceptionally talented at a young age. While fans often judged her absence from the public eye as a setback, insiders say it was a strategic decision, giving her time to cultivate her craft, expand her musical repertoire, and prepare for a career that could endure decades. In recent years, Emanne has embraced a broader musical palette. She continues to perform classical arias, but also experiments with crossover pieces that blend opera with contemporary music. This has allowed her to connect with a wider audience while staying true to the discipline and precision that define her voice. Collaborations with international artists, private recitals, and virtual performances have kept her presence alive in the music community without the pressures of relentless touring or commercial deadlines. Mental and emotional health have remained priorities. In interviews and social media posts shared by her parents, Emanne emphasizes joy in music over competition. She is exploring songwriting, experimenting with languages, and learning the intricacies of performance beyond just singing notes perfectly. Her peers describe her as disciplined yet joyful, a young artist growing naturally rather than being molded entirely by external expectations. For Emanne, the story isn't about fame. It's about longevity, artistry, and authenticity. Her time away from the limelight was not a pause in ambition. It was a carefully considered incubation period that has allowed her to emerge stronger, wiser, and more adaptable than many could have predicted. The lessons learned during her hiatus, patience, vocal care, artistic exploration, and personal balance, have prepared her for a sustainable career that could extend far beyond the fleeting fame of childhood. Looking ahead, Emanne Beasha has the tools to make a significant impact on the world of music. Whether she chooses to focus on classical opera, crossover performances, or entirely new creative directions, the foundation is secure. Fans who followed her journey from AGT now understand that the path of a young prodigy is rarely linear. Her story serves as a blueprint for nurturing talent with care, for prioritizing personal growth alongside professional ambition, and for showing the world that extraordinary gifts can flourish when protected and cultivated with intention. In 2025, Emanne is no longer just the little girl with the incredible voice. She is a young artist on her own terms, poised, talented, and ready to shape her own future. In the world, having waited patiently, will witness the next chapter of a prodigy who refused to be rushed, who learned to grow with grace, and who continues to inspire not just through her voice, but through the thoughtful way she has navigated the extraordinary journey of her life.